Right, carrying on with the theme of same colour bishop endings and one of the sides having a bad bishop and how you sort of finish off that side that has the bad bishop. I've got a couple of positions to look at. This first one is black to move. It's fairly obvious that black has an absolutely stonking advantage. All of white's pawns are fixed on white squares. White's got a lack of space. Their king and bishop are like the wrong way round. In an ideal world, white would like to put their king on g1 and their bishop up here somewhere, just sort of keeping an eye on things from a distance. And I would have thought that'd be very easy for white to draw. But at the moment, the bishop and king are the wrong way around, so black's got a massive advantage. But how does that advantage get realised? So, for example, if black just makes a run for it, just starts trying to take some of the white pawns, like on g2 and h3, the white king just sort of does the same. And it's kind of quite bad for black, because now the bishop's hit, the g5 pawn's falling. That's a very easy draw. That's a very easy draw for white. And, I mean, making a run for it there was a bad idea because of the misplaced bishop here. I mean, it's doing a good job of guarding d3, or this whole diagonal, but it gets hit when the f6 pawn goes. So one of the things that we need to do in endgames is, first of all, do not hurry. In the game, bishop f7 check was played, which Dvoretsky criticises as just sort of mad, because, like, why on earth would you allow the white king closer to, and we talked about the g1 square, why would you let the white king into the d3 square to start defending some of those pawns? But I think what black's done is analyse the king f4 and trying to get the white king out. So I don't think it's that bad an idea, but black would have been better off maintaining control of d3 and just playing a waiting move. So bishop f5 actually leads to a very simple win. A very easy win. When you see how simple black's win is, you just sort of wonder, how on earth did it ever become more than just this simple win? How did black manage to make such a meal of it? And that's what the best players do, isn't it? Well, in fact, this wasn't a demonstration by one of the best players, because they didn't do this, but this would have been the sort of thing that one of your modern day top players, I'm sure, would just do. So bishop f5. Now, interestingly, white can challenge that bishop because the pawn ending's drawn. I'm not going to go into it. I think it's fairly clear to see that pawn ending's drawn, but I'm not going to cover the pawn ending, but it is a drawn pawn ending. And white's got the problem that the bishop and the king need to get swapped round. So yeah, why not offer the swap of bishops? And then as black, we can just stick that bishop out of the way. We've no longer got the problem that king takes f6 arrives with tempo, because our bishop's out the way. What does white do? White could just sort of stand ready to, come and play mutual Pac-Man. And all you've got to do as black now is calculate the final position you're going to end up in if the two sides do go ahead and play mutual Pac-Man. Okay. And I think that's fairly easy to calculate. I think most of these moves are pretty much forced. It's a pretty forcing line. I reckon that position you can calculate there. I don't think it's that difficult a position for us to see in our heads. From there, basically all the pawns are gone. The white king's going to be on g5, the black king's going to be on g3, the h pawn's going. We are going to be a pawn up. And I mean, I'll put the final position on the board, but I reckon we can visualise that position back at the time we decided to make a run for it with king f4. And all we need to think about now is, like, well, is that a one position? Is it and good knowledge of bishop and pawn versus bishop tells us that that is a winning position. Yeah, black's got the rear opposition. White's got the rear opposition, sorry, and that means that the white bishop's just going to sort of do the fortune teller thing. That if the black bishop goes this way, the white bishop goes this way. If the black bishop goes this way, the white bishop goes this way, just always guarding the h3 square with the fortune teller thing, I keep calling it. But remember that if one of the two diagonals that defends the crucial square, in this case h3, is involving 3 or fewer squares, if we can control all but one of those squares with our king, which we do here, then we can use the bishop to control the other one, and it's a win. Okay. Now I'm not going to go into it. There's actually a bit of messing around to do with that, because the white king is hitting the h4 pawn. It also means that when the white bishop arrives on f1, it's got the g2 square to play with. But you can eventually, with a bit of manoeuvring, you can force that pawn forward to h3. You can knock the bishop off the defense of h3, but it is absolutely crucially to do with the fact that it's a shorter diagonal. Have a go at that yourselves. So we've done enough of bishop and pawn versus bishop, but you know, we should have enough knowledge of it back here to sort of see, well, that's the short diagonal. I'm going to be able to do something there. I think that's going to be a win. So yeah, once you've seen that, it's a fairly simple win. Back to the original position, and that's the sort of thing a top player would just sort of make look easy. It's like, wow, they just finished it off. Because from here, like, what's your winning plan? All right, black's got a massive advantage, but what's your winning plan? Because we've seen that king f4 straight away doesn't work, but bishop f5, and black's just sort of calculated that we're going to end up there. Win for black. Anyway, back to the actual game, where bishop f7 check was played and king to d3. And there's loads of things to look at here which are sort of quite instructive, demonstrating other stuff we can think about in same colour bishop endgames. So now the white king has sort of given up on the mutual Pac-Man idea, I guess, and the black king's just coming in. So king f4, bishop f1, king g3, king e3, bishop d5, king back to e2. You can see white hasn't got many moves at all. Pawn forward to f5, white king back to e3. Now at this point, black could, if they wanted to, grab these two pawns for the bishop, and that's something that both the attacker and the defender should be on the lookout for. It's very common in opposite colour bishop endgames to sack the bishop, because then you've suddenly got the pants or whatever against the other bishop. And I kept saying, if you've got opposite colour bishops, then it's almost like you can't win because your bishop's useless. It's like, well, if it's so useless, get rid of it, grab another pawn en route. But you know, given the white's lack of space and the king and the bishop, sort of the wrong way around, white's bishop's getting in the way of its own king. If we could get the h pawn going, you can see that white's in real trouble. And it doesn't take much to realise that f4 check is going to lead to a bishop sacrifice possibility. King e2, just play any old move with the bishop. And white literally has no legal move that doesn't allow that swap on the next go. And it's looking good, but it's not a win. Bishop e2 check, king to g2. It would be a win if white now blundered with bishop g4 to defend the h3 pawn. Oops. Okay. But white doesn't blunder with bishop g4. White just plays bishop f1 check, king g3, king to e2. It's a hold up. So the bishop sack doesn't work, basically, back in this position. f4 check with committing to the bishop sack on f3 doesn't work. So in the game we saw bishop e6, king back to e2, and then g4. And now lots of calculation to do. H takes g4 is fine. F takes g4 was also fine and should have transposed. So f takes g4. And now white blunders with king e3. Okay. So the move that should have been played, the drawing idea, again comes back to knowledge of bishop and pawn versus bishop. Unsurprisingly, because we're about to end up with bishop and pawn versus bishop. White should have taken on g4 and then dropped the king back to e1. And when black drops the bishop back, just sort of, you know, white's in a horrible zugzwang here. Like if the king moves not to e2, the black king's into f2, and if the king moves to e2, then we could see bishops coming in to c6. Doesn't it? I mean, white's sort of in a horrible zugzwang. But what white should do is just give up on their g-pawn, get the bishop onto this diagonal, and then go for the rear opposition. Draw. That's white's drawing plan, with just good knowledge of the rear opposition, with the kings and the bishop controlling h1. And there's nothing that black can do here. I mean, sure, black can hassle the bishop. We're not going to take that. We'll just keep ignoring it. It's just drawn. But white didn't do that. White sort of was probably a bit too materialistic and clung on to things. Play king e3 here. And now black should win this. With g takes f3, g takes f3. And it's just a sort of zugzwang thing. Bishop there, back to c6. We might see f4 at this stage, bishop e4, king e2, bishop f5. White just sort of runs out of moves. There you go, white's run out of moves. Or back at this stage, we could have seen f4 straight away, bishop g4, king e4, king f2. White's just, not got enough space. So at this point here, after king e3, black should take on f3, but instead gives white another chance with bishop d7, and then this time white plays the correct move, which is to take on g4. Bishop takes g4, and now white blunders again. It's not really again, it's just sort of a continuation of the same, failing to realise the drawing plan. It's a pretty simple drawing plan. Just get rid of the g2 pawn and come round with the rear opposition. So king takes g2, king into f4. I mean, can black even stop? I wonder if black can even try and stop the... I wonder if black does that to stop the bishop getting to that diagonal, and then we can play bishop d7. Yeah, so black would have to push the... what does black do here? If you push the h pawn, you can probably... In fact, you can even just take the bishop. Okay, so king f4, clear drawing move there. But instead of bishop b5, white clings on to the g2 pawn, leaves the bishop on f1. The bishop is just horribly placed on f1. King e4, bishop back to c8, king e3, bishop d7, and white resigned. There's just, what can be done? The g2 pawn's about to fall, and this bishop's going to come and challenge on this diagonal. We're going to see similar to what we just talked about with the shorter diagonal, except the white king's not even where it wants to be, which is here with the decent rear opposition. Yeah, so loads of good ideas there of how to win that particular position against this bad bishop. And we saw two top players mess it up, then get it right, then mess it up, then get it right, and hopefully in our games we'll just get it right, I suppose. And one other position to look at. This is definitely worth pausing the video for and see if you can come up with a plan. It's not so much like a move as a plan. What's the plan to actually win this? And really, the plan is that we're going to need to make this e4 break, but you can't do it whilst black can play d4, basically. So in the actual game, that's what we saw. We saw e4, d4. And white did some manoeuvring around. The black bishop's obviously absolutely awful. And white came round and won the d-pawn. And then they agreed to draw there. It was a bit funny that he went and won the d-pawn and then agreed to draw. And one of white's main problems is that his own e-pawn is in the way. His own e-pawn's in the way of the sort of the part of the zugzwanging attacks that he needs to do. And all these. We've got this b5 break we can use at some point. So the do not hurry winning plan is to first of all bring the king round to d4 to block black's defensive try, and then play e4. Okay, because that's going to give us more space. And then black needs to decide, are they going to allow an exchange, which is going to give us either a passed c pawn or a passed e pawn, or are they going to just lose their d pawn, and then we're still a pawn up, but we've got more space to play with. And with this d5 pawn, we've got this diagonal open, this diagonal open, loads more chances to win, basically. So that was the plan. It's still not simple, but at least it's winning, whereas that just isn't. Okay, so that should have been the main thing in your pause the video. Should have been, I'm going to play e4 first, but I'm going to do it with my king on d4. That's the plan, basically. So king g5, the black king tries to follow. Our bishop's covering g6. It still tries to follow, but it just can't really get close. So it just sort of follows and then hovers. And then realizes, yeah, what can we do? e4, and black decides to take on e4. D takes e4. If instead black left it, we'd see a swap with the e pawns. I think it would be suicide to have the c pawn because the king's coming into c5 straight away. So swapping the e pawns, bishop back to f1, and zugzwang is going to feature here. Okay, so king g6, king d3. It's a strange move. It's because there's a bit of a triangulation thing here needed. We basically want to force the same position we just had, but with our king on e3 rather than d4. So king back to g5, king e3. If king g4, we can push the e pawn. It's not really attacked by the black bishop. We don't mind swapping e6 for a6. If king g6, then the king comes in. Okay. That's why, by the way, we didn't. That's why back here we played king d3, because black wasn't in zugzwang yet. And we want to play king f4 there, but we can't. Okay, so king d3, king g5, king e3. If king back to g6, the white king starts coming in, and black's still in zugzwang with their king needing to move. And finally, if the bishop moves, it can't give up control of a6. It has to give up control of h3. So yeah, that's what happens if black just does a passive defense. We swap on d5, just put the bishop on f1, and then just set up this position, but with our king on e3 with black to move. Hence the little bit of triangulation there. Okay. If we come in, for example, if we come in this position, come to e3 straight away, black will play king g5, and then you still have to triangulate. You'd have to go round in circles, back where you came from, or go to use the d3 square there, and then d4, and then back to e3. So black can't really allow you to take on d5, and has to just open up all those lines that I was talking about. Bishop takes e4. We see a waiting move, king d3, king back to g5, black just waits, king e3, king h6. Again, if we don't let the white king in, you know, what else has black got? We could do this to try and not let the white king in, but now you've let the white bishop in. Attacks the f7, king d4. If the king moves, you take the e6 pawn. Bishop c8 defends the e6 pawn. Bishop e8 attacks the c6 pawn. Bishop b7. And how about that for a beautiful sort of following that bishop in till it runs out of moves? You know, would be fine. Well, bishop a8 and bishop c8, I guess, is the final thing. So not king g4. What else can black do? Well, king back lets the white king in. Fine. And the only other thing to do is just sort of be passive with the bishop whilst maintaining defence of the c pawn. Now this is particularly nice. We've always had this b pawn that we could use at any given time, and now's the time to use it. Okay. I mean, obviously the c pawn's pinned. You'd be like, why couldn't you do that with the black bishop on b7 anyway? is because when the a pawn takes, then we've got a6, and the black bishop has no squares. I mean, you're giving him a b pawn that you can use, but you just immediately block it. King g4, bishop b3, king f5, king d4. Just, it's all falling apart. Black cannot move the bishop. This pawn's falling. This is going to get rounded up. It's gone. So not bishop a8, not king. If you bishop a8 allows b5. King forward to g4 allows the bishop in on g6. Okay. I really like that line, by the way. So let's just look at that one again. The way the bishop just sort of chases the other bishop into the corner. I like it. So king back, and then that allows the king in. Okay. King to g7, king g5, king f7, and it's just an outflanking thing now until we get to here. Black finally stays passive with keeps their king where it is, so that, and then moves the bishop to try and a passive defense. But we already know that b5, and it's a win. And we're going to see all the same stuff as before. I can't remember if that was the game or not, but no, that wasn't the game. The game was when e4 was played straight away. So I guess if this is sort of the main line of what should have happened, and I guess the player playing the black side of the pieces in the main line of what should have happened resigns here, I suppose. But that's where it ends. Anyway, hope you found that useful. That's another 2 positions on. You've got a really good bishop, or your opponent. More importantly, your opponent's got a really bad bishop. What do you do? How do you actually sort of attack to finish it off? And Zugzwang's featured like absolutely loads. Do not hurry, just take your time. Bit of manoeuvring around. Yeah, I think they're the main 2 things that have struck me. And not in this video, but in the other Punishing Bad Bishops 1, we saw there was a bit of undermining, putting your pawns on supposedly the wrong colours to do a bit of undermining. But there's also using pawns to restrict the movement of the opponent's bishop. So, I mean, all the pawns are locked here, but if we've got bishops like in this position on light squares, we've got our white pawns on dark squares, which is where we want them, with the opponent's pawns fixed on light squares, which is what's making their bishop so bad. You can also sometimes get some positions where there's still a bit more fluidity in it, and there's potential for you to put your pawns, in this case, on light squares, which is like the wrong thing to do. It breaks the rules. But actually, it's a good idea because it restricts the opponent's bishop. And I'm going to show an extreme example of that. I think I'm going to do that in a video just by itself. Yeah. So anyway, that's enough of punishing bad bishops for now.